stop everything for a moment and lock in, because what just came out of the Indiana Fever front office has taken this situation to another level. General Manager Amber Cox stepped in front of the camera for what was clearly meant to be a controlled, damage-limiting interview after a chaotic and controversial draft week. The objective was simple: calm the fan base, reshape the narrative, and provide clarity around decisions that left many people confused and frustrated. But instead of putting out the fire, the message only added more fuel. Buried within the polished language and careful phrasing was a statement that immediately raised eyebrows. Cox explained that Raven Johnson, who primarily played point guard in college, has the ability to transition into a combo guard at the professional level. That one-word transition changes the entire conversation, because if Johnson is being developed to shift away from a pure point guard role, then by definition, the structure of the backcourt is also shifting. And that naturally leads to the bigger question everyone is asking: what does that mean for Caitlin Clark? This isn't just about adding depth or versatility anymore. It suggests a broader strategic vision where roles may not be as fixed as fans expect, and where responsibilities in the backcourt could be shared or redistributed. That's where the concern and the debate intensifies, because Clark's impact as a primary ball handler and offensive engine is central to how this team operates at its highest level. When discussions shift toward role flexibility and positional transitions, it opens the door to multiple interpretations about how the offense will actually function. And that's exactly why this moment has become such a flashpoint. What was intended to reassure instead introduced more uncertainty, and now the focus turns to how these ideas translate on the court.
Amber has taken her interview, this time with the Indy Star, man. Look like they're keeping everything in-house so they can maybe control the narrative, maybe have their say-so when it comes to questions that is going to be asked. Now, she conducted this interview. No, she spoke about Raven Johnson. Now, I told y'all this boycott is heating up. Guys, with that being said, I'm done talking. Let's get right down.
Let's break down what the general manager actually revealed, because in the business of professional basketball, language is never accidental. It's intentional, precise, and often layered with meaning. When Amber Cox says that Raven Johnson has the ability to transition into a combo guard, she isn't just complimenting versatility, she's outlining a planned role. A combo guard, by definition, is someone who operates both on and off the ball, initiating offense in certain possessions while spacing the floor or cutting in others. That tells you clearly that Johnson is expected to handle the ball at times, but that immediately raises the next logical question: who is she sharing those responsibilities with? When you look at the current structure of the Indiana Fever roster, the answer becomes much clearer. Kelsey Mitchell is not a primary ball handler in that sense. She's a scoring guard, someone who thrives as a finisher rather than an initiator. She doesn't consistently bring the ball up under pressure or control the tempo of the offense. The one player who has been responsible for that role, who organizes the offense, controls pace, and serves as the primary facilitator, is Caitlin Clark. So if Johnson is being developed into a combo guard with on-ball responsibilities, then logically, those responsibilities overlap with Clark's role. Add in another guard like Natasha Cloud or similar veteran ball-handling presences, and the picture becomes even more layered. What this suggests is not a simple backup situation, but a shared system where ball-handling duties are distributed across multiple players, and that has real implications. It means Clark may spend more time operating off the ball during certain stretches, which changes how the offense flows. Now, whether that's beneficial or limiting depends on execution and philosophy. Some systems use multiple ball handlers to reduce pressure, increase unpredictability, and preserve player energy over a long season. Others rely heavily on a single primary creator to maximize efficiency and rhythm. If Clark is used off the ball more frequently, her scoring gravity and shooting ability can still impact the game, but it does shift how her playmaking is deployed. And that's where the debate comes in. Because Clark's value isn't just in scoring, it's in her ability to create opportunities for everyone else. Adjusting that balance is not a small tweak, it's a foundational decision about identity and style. This isn't speculation, it's an interpretation of how roster construction and role definitions typically translate on the court. And when Cox also describes Johnson as the best player available at that draft position, it adds another layer to the discussion. suggesting that the decision was driven by overall evaluation rather than strict positional need. All of this points to a broader theme. The Fever are building toward flexibility, but that flexibility comes with trade-offs. How those trade-offs play out will ultimately determine whether this approach elevates the team or creates new challenges that have to be solved as the season unfolds.
I really didn't expect Raven to be there. She was someone that, I kind of had in that 4, 5, 6 range.
You didn't expect
I think
Raven.
a point
Raven
guard like
wasn't
her
even
that can come in
projected, I
and
don't
run a team
believe,
with great leadership,
to go to this,
great competitive
first round,
drive.
go through the first.
Obviously, on the defensive end of the floor is really, really elite already. And then you see how her game has grown. Shot almost 40% from 3-point this year. I mean, we just really loved everything about her. So when she was sitting there at 10, of course we were going to take her. So yes, it adds tremendous depth. But because we have Ty Harris, because, obviously we've got Caitlin back in healthy, it gives her a chance to really grow. For every rookie coming in.
She didn't hesitate when describing the decision. Amber Cox made it clear that the front office believed Raven Johnson had the talent to be selected within the top 4 or 5 picks of the draft. She emphasized how excited they were to still see her available at number 10 and went as far as calling the selection a home run. That kind of language matters. Those aren't the words of an executive who simply settled because preferred options were gone. That is the tone of someone who had conviction, someone who identified a player they valued highly and was prepared to act on it. In other words, this wasn't a last-minute adjustment or a reactive move, it reflects a level of intent. When a front office speaks that confidently about a pick, it usually signals alignment between scouting, coaching philosophy, and long-term planning. For the Indiana Fever, that suggests this decision was part of a broader vision rather than a one-off choice. And when you connect that to earlier comments about role flexibility and backcourt structure, it begins to paint a picture of where the team might be heading strategically. Whether that direction ultimately elevates the offense or creates new challenges will depend on how those ideas translate once the games begin. But the messaging itself makes one thing clear: this was a deliberate move, not an accidental one.
Talented players not make rosters. And there just weren't enough roster spots. And now we've got these 2 development spots with 2 additional teams coming in the league, 3 more down the road. It just allows us to develop players. Again, this league is so elite in terms of the talent. It's hard sometimes for players coming directly from college to be able to step in and impact. And because we've only got 12 regular roster spots, we have to be really prepared for those injuries, right? Like we need the depth there for people who are ready to step on the court and play. So this gives us a great chance to, get people in our pipeline that we want to see grow and develop.
Listen closely to that explanation, because this is where the situation becomes far more complex than it appears on the surface. The Indiana Fever used a provision within the current WNBA structure to place Justine Pissett on a developmental deal. And the underlying reason is simple: they did not have a spot available on the standard 1-2 player roster. That decision introduces a very real layer of risk. Under these rules, a player in that position is not as firmly secured as a fully rostered contract, meaning another team with a need for size and shooting could step in with an opportunity. And in today's league, where spacing and length are highly valued, teams such as the New York Liberty or the Las Vegas Aces are always evaluating ways to strengthen those exact areas. That naturally leads to the question of why Indiana chose to expose itself to that possibility. The answer appears tied to overall roster construction. By investing heavily in guard depth, including players like Raven Johnson, alongside established names such as Kelsey Mitchell, the team has created a crowded backcourt, while still working to balance size and spacing in the front court around Aaliyah Boston. That imbalance doesn't automatically mean failure, but it does create strategic challenges that have to be solved through scheme and execution. When you shift from roster construction to on-court strategy, the discussion becomes even more nuanced. Basketball at the highest level is fundamentally about spacing, angles, and how defenses react to different threats. If a player like Raven Johnson initiates the offense, opposing defenses will adjust based on scouting tendencies. They may choose to go under screens or provide extra help in the paint, depending on how they evaluate her perimeter shooting. At the same time, having Caitlin Clark off the ball changes defensive responsibilities as well. Teams often assign significant attention to elite shooters and creators, sometimes denying easy touches or positioning defenders to limit clean looks. These are common strategic counters in professional basketball, and how a team responds to them is what defines its offensive identity. If spacing tightens, it places greater importance on timing, movement, and decision-making across the lineup. That's why role clarity and system design matter so much. They determine whether those defensive adjustments create problems or opportunities. Beyond tactics, there's also a philosophical layer to all of this. Coaches, including Stephanie White, often balance structure with player freedom, trying to build systems that maximize team efficiency over the course of a long season. Some approaches lean toward a single primary creator, while others emphasize multiple ball handlers and shared responsibilities. Neither approach is inherently right or wrong. It depends on personnel, chemistry, and execution. But when those philosophies intersect with a player who has a unique skill set like Caitlin Clark, the stakes feel higher because her style of play naturally shapes the entire offense. That's where the ongoing conversation about versatility comes in. It's a term that has been used consistently by leadership figures, including Amber Cox and Kelly Krauskopf, to describe the roster vision. In many cases, versatility is valuable. It allows lineups to adapt, switch defensively, and adjust to different opponents. But it also introduces trade-offs, particularly when it intersects with players whose impact is most effective in clearly defined roles. The broader reality is that building a successful team often involves finding the right balance between flexibility and specialization. Clark's combination of shooting range, playmaking vision, and ability to influence defensive positioning is rare, and how that is integrated into a broader system will be one of the defining factors of the season. At the same time, the organization appears to be exploring ways to diversify responsibilities across the roster, which could reduce pressure in some areas while creating new questions in others. That tension between maximizing a unique talent and building a balanced, adaptable system is not unusual in professional sports, but it does require precise execution to work effectively. As training camp begins, those ideas move from theory to reality. This is where rotations are tested, roles are clarified, and systems are refined through repetition and competition. Early practices and scrimmages will provide the first real indicators of how these concepts translate on the court. It's also the point where communication, both internally and with the fan base, becomes critical. Expectations are high, attention is intense, and every decision will be closely analyzed. Ultimately, the direction the Fever choose will reveal itself through performance, not just messaging. And that's what makes this moment so important, because it's no longer about projections or interpretations. It's about what actually works when the ball is in play and the season begins to take shape.